There's all kinds of things happening on Saturday. Conor McGregor went on Twitter as well, and he's like picking, like all of a sudden we've gone from Conor saying, beg me, to Conor saying, I'll fight him on the same night, I'll go to Brazil. He really seems to have this thing for fighting in Brazil, which is somewhat bizarre for me, but maybe he likes fighting in hostile territory. And it reminds me of the early days of Conor. Remember there was one time where Diego Sanchez was left without an opponent for the Mexico card, and he's like, I'm going to fight Diego Sanchez in Mexico. He was wanting to fight everyone every week. And it reminds me of that Conor, and for me, it makes me think that Conor is ready to come back. He's itching to come back. He misses fighting, and he recognizes he needs a win. What do you guys make of this new Conor, who is no longer taking the approach of like, I'm above this all, come beg me, come ask nicely, come kiss the ring? Now he's just like calling everyone out left and right. What do you make of this switch?
For me, it's a lot like the Conor we've always known. He wants to do things on his own terms, his own timing. I mean, how many stories have you done with him where he just misses whatever time he says he's going to be there? We see him at press conferences on his own schedule. Brett and I did a story with him for the magazine years ago, and we just had to hang out and wait. That was what we were told to do by his manager at the time, Tom Egan, was Conor will let us know when he wants to go to the gym. So I think now he's bored. Now he wants to fight again, and he's ready to come back. So that's why he's trying to dictate the terms, start fights, say things on social media, tweet at this fighter, that fighter, and say he's ready to rock. And then he'll sit there and look at the landscape and see what's the most fiscally beneficial fight for him, what's going to make the most money, and go for it. And I miss the guy. I miss when he was fighting every few months and winning fights. We haven't seen him win since, again, November 2016. So it would be nice to see one of the better pound-for-pound fighters on the planet get back in the octagon and do what he does best.
Yeah, it's a different approach, clearly, but I think it's the same result. There's really no difference in what will ultimately happen, whether it's you come line up and kiss the rings, or I'm calling everybody out, and then ultimately they'll present me the options and I'll choose. There's really no difference. It's just the same. It's a different approach, but ultimately it's Conor's world, as Cowboy once said. And
why do you got to bring that up again? I'm trying to move on from all this, all right?
Ariel was so mad about that.
What do you mean?
What how Cowboy was, if you do me the honor of...
Yes.
Oh, I know.
Yes.
But he's not wrong in the sense that it is Conor's world. And so even though I would say there's a little bit of the mystique gone from the idea of Conor being in the throne and saying, come to me, and present yourself. It seems a little more desperate from an outward perspective, but it's also engagement, interest. Everything is being driven by Conor. So ultimately, regardless of how he gets there, it will be a competition for who gets to fight Conor next, and he will be selecting that. Okay, so if you guys are advising him, and I know we kind of talked about Max Holloway versus Cerrone as far as like the two options, but now he's talked about Anderson Silva again. There's the Nate Diaz trilogy fight that he mentioned as well on Twitter. There's the Max Holloway thing, which, by the way, of everyone, the only one he hasn't talked about is Max Holloway as of late, which I find very interesting. There's the Donald Cerrone thing. There's anyone under the sun. If you're advising Conor McGregor right now, and we're shooting for International Fight Week, July, Las Vegas, who are we picking?
If I'm Conor McGregor, I think the fight that gets the most intrigue is probably Max Holloway. He's a champion, have him come up to 155. Max clearly isn't opposed to it. He's out there touring Jameson, talking about it's the finest Irish whiskey out there. But we did a story on ESPN.com this week, who should Conor fight next? From that vantage point of considering UFC hierarchy, given the fact that Conor has gone so long without a win, and he's someone who I think the public's starting to wane on his importance in the greater MMA picture because they haven't seen him fight for so long. I'm thinking Donald Cerrone. That was my pick in the story. I said Donald Cerrone. It's a fight. It's a guy with name value. It's a matchup I like for Conor. And it just gets that win for him, that ever-important win, so he can justify then saying, okay, I should get another crack at Khabib. And I know Tony Ferguson's going to have something to say about that, and just down the line of lightweights who are on win streaks will say something about that. But those would be my two. Would be either Max Holloway, just because of the prestige of a de facto super fight, even though Conor's not a champion. You have a champion changing weights to take on someone. Sorry, I hit the microphone with my nose there. Or Cowboy Cerrone.
You got to pick one. Can't fight two guys on the same night.
Back at UFC 4,
yes,
you could.
That's true.
I'll go Cowboy just to stay true to what I said in the story.
So if you're Conor, if you're his team, you're saying let's pick Cowboy.
Yeah, because then that puts me in line to fight Khabib.
2 weeks ago, we sat not in this room, but a room adjacent, and I picked Max Holloway as the biggest fight for Conor McGregor. I've not waned from that opinion. And in fact, based on that story that was on ESPN.com, there was a poll by ESPN MMA that got 20,000 respondents, and Max Holloway with 43% was leading that poll. So not only do I think
Who are
it
the
has
options?
Max Holloway,
Cowboy.
Conor McGregor, Cowboy Cerrone, Nate Diaz, and Anderson Silva.
Right. I'm shocked that Nate Diaz didn't win.
Nah, I think Nate has lost that.
The biggest mainstream fight, if they announce today that Conor McGregor is fighting Nate Diaz, I guarantee you SportsCenter, all the people in this company that are sort of not really sure how they feel about MMA or maybe just don't know enough, they all know about that rivalry. Mm-hmm. That's the one. They don't know who Max Holloway is, right? They don't know who Donald Cerrone is. They know the Nate Diaz-Conor McGregor feud. They know that he tapped out Conor. Nate did. They know about the rematch. I think that's the one that creates the most buzz.
I would argue that
they
Max
probably
Holloway,
don't even know that Nate hasn't fought for the last 2.5 years.
Well, that's the thing. Max Holloway has been taking people out and walks around with a strap. Meanwhile, Nate Diaz has been doing nothing since the Conor McGregor fight. So when you're telling that story, that's great when you announce it. But what about after that? What is Nate Diaz going to do in the promotion of the fight? Because I'll tell you that Max Holloway would promote it. And Max Holloway's holding that gold that will look pretty good on those press conference tables when he's talking about it. Gold that Conor McGregor used to hold at 145. I think the announcement, that Nate Diaz will get people out of bed on that one, but I don't think that that's the fight to make. I think Max Holloway sells it.
I have the poll here. The final results, ESPN.com or Twitter.com/ESPN MMA. By the way, great emoji choice by whoever put out this tweet. Max Holloway, 43%, leading the way, 18,000, almost 18,500 votes. Cowboy, 39%. So we have 43, 39. Nate Diaz way down at 14%, and Anderson Silva, 4%.
So I'm not surprised by those results because the people who follow that account are the hardest of the hardcore, right?
Yes. Yep.
I bet you if you would have done that poll on, say,
SportsCenter, Twitter,
I think Nate Diaz wins.
That's a great experiment.
Maybe Anderson Silva. Who knows? I'd be interested to see
Nate Diaz
New York
wins.
Rich should make a phone call and make
that
happen.
I think Nate Diaz wins because everyone knows about that feud. And by the way, I'm not sitting here campaigning for that.
Sure.
I love the Holloway fight.
Yeah.
I said it 2 weeks ago that that's the fight that I would choose. I think eventually it ends up being Donald Cerrone. I think that that's probably the most winnable fight. But the Nate Diaz fight is the one that garners the most amount of mainstream interest, in my opinion.
Is it a realistic thing? Is Nate Diaz even interested in the picture on the table? Yeah?
Of course.
Well, there you go.
Why do you think he hasn't fought anyone else?
Look, I'm not saying I'm not interested in Diaz. That's my number 2. I don't want to rehash this, but I'm not particularly interested in Cowboy versus McGregor. It doesn't do anything for me. I don't see a story. I'm just not into it.
Right.
To me, Nate Diaz is number 2.
I just want everyone to know that's New York Rick speaking.
That was not Ariel Helwani.
Okay? All right.
Donald Cerrone's a great fighter. Just not interested in that fight in particular. To me, Nate Diaz is number 2, and I could be convinced if all of a sudden he starts making some noise and does come out of the tree that he's been hibernating in and starts talking about Conor McGregor.
MVP Daily, Saturday night. Huge grudge match. Everyone's in on it, right? Fun card. There's some other stuff. MVP Daily. Main event versus the Sunday main event. And I want to remind everyone, you don't have to choose here, right? Bellator's by itself on Saturday. UFC's by itself on Sunday. Which main event are you more into? MVP Daily or Ngannou Kane?
What are the qualifications for this question?
What are you more excited about?
Just
if you had
baseline
to choose,
level. I'm watching one only. I can only watch it.
Which
New
one
York
intrigues
Rick,
you?
Me, I am watching.
Which one intrigues you
Ngannou
more?
and Kane.
That's a bigger fight for you?
Yeah, to me that matters more. I think in the UFC's heavyweight division, neither of these guys is very far from a title shot. Now, obviously, Kane has its complications when we're talking about title opportunities, but one win for either guy, and they're right there knocking on the door. And to be honest, to me, the UFC's heavyweight belt means a lot more than a grudge match between Michael Page and Paul Daly.
$1 million.
Yeah, that part is not doing it for me. Love the fight, but if I'm forced to choose, it's going to be Sunday.
I agree, because if you were to tell me that this were a competitive fight, an entertaining fight, and that at some point in 2020, spring, summer 2020, this is a heavyweight title fight in the UFC, I would absolutely believe it. These guys are in the short list of best heavyweights on the planet, and there are few things in combat sports more exciting than a heavyweight title fight. So, given the situation that Daniel Cormier is ready for his one for the road, these guys are one step closer to a title shot. Just by the fact of the champion is going to be walking away at some point in the not too distant future. So I'm going with Ngannou Velasquez because it's going to tell me who's probably at worst the number one contender, if not someone who's fighting someone for what would be an undisputed belt in 8 months to a year.